Thank you, Professor Zul, for the opening speech. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Ahmad Farouk Musa, our founder and director of the Islamic Renaissance Front, to give his speech. Dr. Ahmad Farouk Musa is our founder. He is actively involved in the civil society and the emerging discourse on post-Islamism. He is also involved in interfaith dialogue, especially with regard to Christian-Muslim relation and intra-faith dialogue, especially the Shia-Sunni discourse. He has presented papers at numerous international meetings, including at the Symposium on Islam and Contemporary Issues in Tehran, Iran in 2017, and also in Singapore in August 2019. Professionally, he is an academic researcher at the School of Medicine, Monash University, Malaysia. He is currently a commissioner at the Commonwealth Initiative for the Freedom of Religion or Belief, based in Westminster, London, and also a research fellow at STFI Sadra, Jakarta. He is also the founding member of Muslim Professional Forum and director at the Center for Combating Corruption and Cronyism, and also a former deputy chairperson of Bersih 2.0, a strong civil movement working for a free and fair election. So I would like to invite Dr. Farouk to continue.
Chairperson Dr. Mariam Zakia, respected and esteemed scholar and Director of the International Islamic University of Malaysia, Tan Sri Professor Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Honourable Speakers, Professor James Piscatori, Professor Jeffrey Kenney, and Dr. Azhar Ibrahim, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are celebrating the 10th year after the inaugural launch of the IRF on 12th of December 2009 at the Securities Commission, Mount Kiara, Kuala Lumpur, by Professor Tariq Ramadan in the presence of Professor Muhammad Kamal Hassan, the former rector of UIA. Though officially IRF was registered on 30th October 2007, while I was still working at Monash Medical Centre in Melbourne, Australia, it was not until 2008 when we started to hold small meetings, usras and book dissections at the Wilayah Mosque, and later moved to my neighborhood at Duta Nusantara Sri Hatamas. None of this could have been possible without the help of Sister Asna Ahmad, who is here today, and her husband Zainal Abidin Jamaah, and also my co-director Mr. Manan Razali and Dr. Johari Bucks, who are all founding members of Muslim Professionals Forum. Yes, IRF was initially formed with another director, Mr. Manan, and it all started with the realization that the Muslim Ummah is lacking the most important component in the lives, that is the utilization of the rational faculty. In Surah Al-Azhar, the Confederates, chapter 33, verse 72, Allah commanded, Inna aradna al-amanata ala samawati wal-ardi wal-jibal fa'abayna an yahmilnaha wa ashfaqna minha wa hamalaha al-insan innahu kana zaluman jahula. Verily we did offer the amanah, the trust of volition and reason, to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused to bear it because they were afraid of it. Yet men took it up, for verily he has always been prone to be the most wicked, most foolish. Although the classical commentators gave all kinds of laborious explanations to the term amanah, or trust, occurring in this parable, to me the most convincing of them was as proposed by the learned Allama Muhammad Asad, that is reason or intellect, or the faculty of volition, that is the ability to choose between two or more possible courses of action or modes of behavior, and thus to discern between good and evil. The faculty of reason, or the faculty of discernment, is the main thing that is missing from Muslims today. Rather than exercising the faculty of reason or intellect that was bestowed upon us, or upon them, the faculty that has elevated the status above those of celestial being as described in Surah Al-Baqarah or the cow, the Muslims today tend to be fixated in a blind imitation or taqlid of their predecessors or the ulama, whom they consider as infallibles. This particular verse in this chapter, which was the verse that had triggered my brain cells to think and rethink. It happened on one afternoon in 2005 while I was reading the book Islam at the Crossroads by Muhammad Asad, who was probably the most influential European Muslim in the 21st century, when he quoted this particular verse of 31 of chapter 2, Al-Baqarah, وَعَلَّمَ الْآدَمَ أَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا, and he imparted unto Adam the name of all things. According to Muhammad Asad, in philosophical terminology, the term ism, or the plural asma, or name, denotes a concept. And the subsequent verses show that owing to this God-given knowledge of those names or conceptual thinking, man is, in certain respect, superior to angels. The names are a symbolic expression for the power of defining terms, the power of articulate thinking, which is peculiar to the human beings and which enables him, in the word of the Quran, to be God's vicegerent or Khalifa on earth. This particular explanation by Muhammad Asad had struck me like a lightning, and it answers the most pertinent question in my life with regard to Islam and political Islam on the concept of Islam huwa al-hal. Islam is the solution. But the solutions to the problems faced by the Muslims today did not lie entirely in the Quran, the compendia of hadith, or the corpus of knowledge of the previous scholars. Rather, it was in the utilization of aqal, or reason. The Quran strongly recommends that Muslims use the faculty of intellect, or aqal, appropriately. The word aqal can be found in more than 45 verses in the Quran. The Quran encourages us to use aqal, to reflect and to ponder, so that we could derive benefits or maslahah out of it, and to avoid hardship. Clearly, the attitude of Muslims in resorting to literal interpretation of the text, or what we call in Arabic as nas, and refuting anything that falls within the realm of reason, contributed to the stagnation and decaying condition of the ummah itself. What more when Muslims nowadays tend to take the Quran as a book of science or a book of history? In this respect, Imam Muhammad Abduh, the most important reformer of the 20th century, explained the reality of historiography and its difference with the stories in the Quran. Historiography is a scientific field of knowledge based on research and critical analysis derived from the data obtained, while in the Quran, the historical stories intend to promote moral, spiritual, and religious values. The stories might come from historical incidents, but their point is not to teach history. That is why the names of some people, dates, and places are not indicated in the Quran. While the narratives may touch upon a prophet or an enemy of the prophet, the Pharaoh, for example, many facts are left out. Because of that, Muhammad Abduh differs with the past interpreters who strive to explain these matters, which were not explained in detail in the Quran. He stresses that the teaching from the narrative does not rely on such information, but the lessons that could be derived from them. Just as God describes things beyond the reach of human understanding, God uses loaned images from the actual physical form or mental experience by using what was stated by the revered Mu'tazila interpreter Az-Zamakhshari in his work Al-Kashaf, relating to Surah 13 verse 35, Tamsilan lima ghaba anna bima nushahid. That is, through a parabolic illustration in the sense of something we know from experience about something that goes beyond our own perception. In a simpler language, for example, how God illustrates peace and tranquility regarding heaven, for example. Hence, loaned images were used that are perceivable from worldly experience are the flowing rivers. That is, the flowing rivers are the lone images used by God to illustrate the peace and tranquility in heaven, and not to be understood in its literal sense. We are not saying that they are rivers in heavens. It's just lone images of what we can experience in this world. The struggle of Muhammad Abduh to restore the glory of the Muslims by inviting them to dig up the treasures and legacies left by the pioneers who had once dominated and conquered the world in all fields of knowledge, for they were the Mu'tazilah, who never opposed reason, who believed that the good and bad outcome of a race was determined by man himself. God does not interfere in determining the fate of the people. God only sets the laws of nature that He created. And by understanding how the unchanging laws of nature enables human to progress in science and technology. And that was what Prof Zul was saying just now. The God created gravity will make whatever in the space that is affected by the force of gravity to be drawn towards the earth. That is the example of law that God had created. And this is the belief of the Mu'tazilah, who believe that this law of nature is constant and unchanging. I think Prof mentioned that in your speech last night. Yeah? As such, the sperm that joins the ovum will result in a zygote, which turns into a morula, which would then turn into a blastocyst. Professor Hamid is here. Which will in the end be the fetus in the womb. Such is the law created by God. Understanding these laws allows humans to create in vitro fertilization or artificial insemination, as how God made human beings according to the natural law He created. This kind of thinking and empirical evidence was what enabled the Mu'tazilah with their Baitul Hikmah, or house of wisdom, to lead the world during their time with all the knowledge of biology, astronomy, geography, physics, chemistry, medicine, and so on. Because to the Mu'tazilah, the natural law created by God was always constant and unchanged. Such is the Sunnatullah. And that was why the discovery of all sciences had become the cornerstone of the success of the Mu'tazilah. The discovery of sciences in all fields became the norm because science could be empirically proven. And the Mu'tazilah believed that there would be no aberrations or changes in the natural law that God has set. فَلَنْ تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا وَلَنْ تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَحْوِيلًا. But we will never find in the way of Allah any change, and we will never find in the way of Allah, in the sunnah of Allah, any alteration. Surah Fatir, verse 43. It is not in believing in miraculous things, such what is known as spiritual surgery, which was thought of as an Islamic medicine. This is the result of to me, is the Asharite belief that all the miraculous things could happen because God is the mightiest. God Almighty was not bound by the law that He Himself created, according to the Asharite. Did they not also believe that man's good and bad luck was predetermined by God? Man has no power in determining his destiny. The paradigm of pessimism and fatalism, which considers the destiny determined by God based on qada and qadar, or predestination, is understood by the Asharites, was what being often used to define in striving and making changes. And it was here where the Muslims became static and not creative, and fell into poverty, misery, and suffering, because they had to accept this life willingly as God's destiny. But the Mu'tazilah was supporters of the doctrine of free will, which means they denied that the deeds of man were the creation of God. Conversely, man was the maker of his own deeds based on the will given to him by God. This can be understood more precisely when we look at the story of Adam and Eve in Surah Al-A'raf, or what Muhammad said translated as the faculty of discernment. The events in which Satan, or which may be meant by the impulse of evil incited Adam and Eve to approach this, what is known as al-Khuld, or this tree, that were allegories for the limitations of God set on the patience and the will of man. But with the rising level of consciousness symbolized by the act of denying God's orders, Adam was endowed with a moral free will, where man could distinguish between right and wrong and then choose his own way of life. In a more profound sense, the allegory of Adam's fall was not a retrogressive meaning, but rather represented a new stage in human development which opened the ground on moral considerations. By prohibiting Adam from approaching the tree, God allows people to choose to do wrong. I think that was what I mentioned in the talk this morning. And with that also, choose to do right, for men are endowed with a moral free will that distinguishes them from the angels. Therefore, the first effort to restore this to the Muslim community in general and to the Malay Muslims in this country in particular, to our mind, is to break the theological root of the people's consciousness and thought to be aligned to the liberating and enlightening theological minds, a thinking that allows humans to make their own judgments and not to just surrender to fate. Muslims should not expect change by simply sitting and praying and expecting miracles to occur. They have the wrong beliefs, which were directly or indirectly inherited from the Ash'ariyah, that every affair in this world has been determined for them. No matter how hard they tried, what has been destined would not change. As a result, Muslims became the most unproductive in their contribution to science, technology, and the human civilization. We in the RF intend to break all those false beliefs. We believe that if we want to change the state and condition of Muslims at this point, we must first change our thinking and question the theology that we hold to, so that we can truly understand the will of the Quran, with which it had brought Muslims glory in the past and would pave a similar glory to us in the future. In uridu illa al-islah mastata'tu wa ma tawfiqi illa billah. I desire nothing but reform, al-islah, as far as I am able. There is no guidance for me except from Allah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.